Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Heart of New York show. I have a very special guest today, someone that I admire. I'm honored to have him on. And not only that, you will hear things, good things, real good things that are happening to Staten Island, to the state of New York. And this man has a lot to do with it, right here. And that's why it's imperative that we get this good news out to you, as I see it. Good news for all you Staten Islanders and everyone else around the boroughs. Assemblyman Michael Reilly. He's a professional with over 30 years' experience in community engagement and leadership across both public and private sectors. He's been named among Staten Island's most influential people by the City and State New York Magazine to be highlighted at Staten Island Week's virtual mayor by New York One News. Mr. Reilly holds a Master of Science degree in Management and Leadership from Western Governors University. He was elected to the New York State Assembly on November 6, 2018. His districts include the South Shore of Staten Island, as well as parts of the Mid-Island. Assemblyman Reilly serves as the ranking minority member of the Assembly Committee on Cities. He also serves on committees such as Codes, Education, Government, Employees, Higher Education, and Housing. Assemblyman Reilly's priorities have been, this is important, he's been improving our education and community programs and transportation systems, combating the state's devastating opioid crisis, supporting law enforcement officers, and bolstering public safety. Very, very important matters here. Mike Reilly has dedicated most of his life to public service, and I admire this. Enlisting in the United States Army Reserve and then transitioning to the New York State City Police Department, where he served for 12 years, as retired as a lieutenant from Brooklyn's 90th Precinct. In 2009, he continued his service as a volunteer member of Community Educational Council 31, where he focused on improving accountability and transparency of New York City public schools and served as president. He's provided cyberbullying workshops in schools and connected more than 30,000 students, parents, and staff members to the program. Assemblyman Reilly has also served as a volunteer member of the Staten Island YMCA Board of Managers. And he has coached the Staten Island YMCA's Youth Basketball League. There's more. On the business side, he's an executive leadership coach with Lions Pride Leadership, serves as a digital citizenship speaker and a visionary strategist. He also resides in Englewood section of Staten Island with his wife, Mary, and their 3 children. Bro, welcome.
Thank you.
I mean, what an impressive background you have. And I'm just admire what you have done, what you are doing, and what you got planned for the future.
Thank you so much. And that introduction was well over the top, and much appreciated. Thank you.
You're over the top. Let me tell you something. I've been with a lot of politicians before, and this man right here is about as good as you get, the best of the best, and a true blue, honest man. How often can you say that, or you hear something like that about a politician? But here he is. That's why I'm so humbled that he's here today to go over some exciting things. What's the most exciting thing you're doing right now, bro?
So I think some of the things that we're concentrating on now, and we got some good news that the governor actually put a pause on congestion pricing. Anybody that doesn't know what congestion pricing is in New York City, you were going to have to pay an extra toll to enter Lower Manhattan from any direction, whether it was from New Jersey, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, wherever you were coming from. But in particular, it was going to impact Staten Islanders a lot more than the other commuters. Because you think about it, we're really the only ones in the city that have to pay to get back home because we have to go over a bridge, the Verrazano. And we also have to travel over the bridges coming from New Jersey, too. So The idea of paying for congestion pricing for us to go to our doctors, for our elderly to go over to their medical appointments in Manhattan, it was just going to be so burdensome, and it was going to put it was basically another tax on Staten Islanders. So we got some welcome news that it's put on pause for now. We will see what happens in the future, but I will continue to keep fighting with my colleagues here on Staten Island, because we're united, both sides of the aisle here on Staten Island, against congestion pricing.
You see, that's wonderful, when you can be united on both sides, okay, on something as important as this, because those $15 entries add up.
Oh, absolutely.
And I just can't see it in the time we are with the way inflation is and the prices of gasoline, everything, how people can spend that money and think that it's wrong. I believe it's wrong. I mean, you're doing something about it, and you're fighting for you out there, he's fighting for. Okay, for the betterment of the people in Staten Island and around, because this helps everybody, even coming from New Jersey and everything, that's got to pay $15, which is just to pass through.
So we had a lawsuit that was filed with the borough president, Vito Fasella, and all our electeds here on Staten Island. And I think that was part of the pressure that we were able to put on the governor and the other policy makers to put this on a pause. So hopefully we'll keep up that pressure and get rid of this congestion pricing scheme altogether.
Amen to that. I mean, see, that's where the importance of having a man like Michael Reilly in office right now. He stands up and he fights for you. It's not going to happen by people just complaining. They took action. They filed a lawsuit, you said?
Yes.
And they put pressure on him. But this is good stuff, good pressure, good stuff to benefit the people, not take away from you. Other than the congesting prices, some of the things that you're involved in on an outgoing basis is so impressive on what I've read today. What are the other immediate things that you're attending to?
So some of the immediate things that are happening now is our close of session just ended last week for the state legislature, and they passed a bill that would allow, it would create 3 new civil court judge seats in each borough in New York City except Staten Island. So 12 new civil court judge seats in the other 4 boroughs. So when I spoke on this legislation and I brought it to the governor's office to their attention, I said, this is about equity. You know, when we talk about claims filed in civil court, Staten Island is very comparable to the other 4 boroughs. In fact, court cases filed in the civil court year-to-date in 2024, we have 2,000 more cases filed than in Manhattan. So for Staten Islanders to have equitable justice, they have to have the ability to have a timely case. They have to have an ability to go before the judges. And unfortunately, this legislation has actually excluded Staten Island. Now, the other counties that are outside of New York City but border New York City, they had judges in that legislation as well. So it really is a disadvantage to Staten Island that we're the only ones in the New York City region that did not get assigned judge seats. Now, I spoke about the cases and the backlogs, and that's really what this is about. But it really is about equity. And far too often, we know that Staten Island has been left out of incidents and policies and procedures that happen. You know, just think about when I was on the Community Education Council, there was a program called the My Brother's Keeper. And it was for all of New York City. It was to help disadvantaged men of color, youth of color in school. And all 4 boroughs outside of Staten Island got approved to be a part of that program. And Staten Island was left out. And as a volunteer, as the president of the CEC with some of my fellow parent advocates, we wrote a letter to the New York City chancellor of the Department of Education and the State Education Commissioner. And we pointed out that that Staten Island has just the same need as the other boroughs. And through that advocacy, we were able to get that program implemented in Staten Island. But it took some work, and it took an argument showing the data, showing our need. And I feel that this case with the judges is the same type of situation. As long as I can prove, and with my colleagues who joined me in a letter to the governor, so it's a bipartisan letter that we sent to the governor, asking Governor Hochul to, if she signs this bill into law, she immediately requires the state legislature to amend it to allow Staten Island to have 3 judges as well for this coming November election. And that's what this is about. It's about having an equitable justice system. And my colleagues on both sides of the aisle agree.
Now, when you're, as you say, how many? 3 judges less?
Yep.
That
So,
you-
so the remarkable thing is that so New York City has about 130 civil court judges. So Staten Island represents 6% of New York City's population with 500,000 people. But when it comes to civil court judges, we only represent 3% of the total amount of judges. We only have 4 Staten Island civil court judges. Now, why is that important? Well, you think about it. In 1968, that was the last time a new civil court judgeship was created in Staten Island. And that was the 4th seat that we have now. Back in 1968, Staten Island had 300,000 people residing in it. Today, we have approximately 500,000, and yet there has not been an additional judge seat created in Staten Island.
Incredible. And this just puts pressure on the amount of cases that need to go to court. Is that right? I mean, they were like overloaded?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we have knowledge of people that are waiting at least 4 or 5 years for their civil case to be heard. And why is that? Because we have only 4 judges that are working on the same amount of backlog cases, same amount of cases that are filed as in Manhattan.
And what about criminal cases that come in? What happens when they got to,
So criminal case is a different part of the court system.
Okay.
So we have, those judgeships are different than the civil court
than the
judges.
civil? Okay. So, and you're in there battling,
I'm trying.
you're
Yeah.
trying, and you're saying by November?
So November is the election that this legislation would establish the elections this November 5th,
Right.
2024, for those judgeships. So what I'm hoping for is that the governor will mandate that the legislation be amended if she signs it into law. And what we would need to do is go back to Albany to
Right.
amend that legislation and then have it where Staten Island judgeships would be on the ballot for this November as well. Now, there's a good chance that we're going to go back to Albany this summer. The talk about trying to get the MTA some money based on the congestion pricing being halted. So there is rumors out there that the governor or the leaders in the Senate and the Assembly on the majority side are going to call us back into session in July. So I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to correct that miscarriage of justice where Staten Island was excluded from the new judgeships.
And does anybody have a theory why?
Well, I mean, there's
Not
been
to
some
put a blame on anybody,
Yeah,
but-
there's been some talk about the reason why is, it comes down to partisanship, where, historically Staten Island has most likely elected Republican judges.
Okay.
So that's been a theory. I would hope that that was not the case.
Right.
I'm hoping that they will see that this is just an oversight and they will correct it. But listen, I'm not naive. I know that when they talk about electing judges, it is a political thing. And unfortunately, being that Staten Island was the only county in New York City and the surrounding counties of the city that did not get a judge, it makes you wonder what was really the nexus behind excluding us.
Oh, that's absolutely unacceptable. What is a big problem everywhere, and you're combating it, is the devastating opioid crisis. How's that going?
So I have to give a shout out to my newest colleague, Sam Perizzolo, who's an assemblyman for the West Shore of Staten Island.
Okay.
He and parts of the North Shore. He took the lead in negotiating with the mayor's office to get us some of the funds that were required to combat this opioid epidemic, to get more resources to our agencies that are helping those struggling with addiction. And, that's a prime example of another reason or another highlight of how Staten Island was left out of a program. And this is it's about equity. It's about us getting our fair share to combat this deadly epidemic of drug abuse, right, and addiction. And, so we all circled around, and Sam led the effort, and we were successful in getting the mayor to give more funds. And that's the unique thing about Staten Island. Although we have a Republican and Democrat divide, right, in Staten Island, we historically put partisanship aside, and we work for what's best for Staten Islanders.
Both sides.
Both sides, both my Republican and Democrat colleagues.
You don't hear that too often.
Yeah.
That's a gift.
And you know what? And if you think about it, looking at it at a high level of all of New York City, the other four boroughs are predominantly one party control, right? The Democratic Party.
Right.
Some of them can't come to negotiating or agreeing on issues, where we're fortunate here that even when we cross the aisle, we agree on some policies where we fight for. We've circled around closing the dump, right? My predecessors, that was a bipartisan effort. Now it's a beautiful park, right? We just recently held a press conference with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, where they committed an amount of money that they are now going to install license plate readers on all three of the Staten Island crossing the bridges. Right now, the first permanent license plate readers are on the Gothels Bridge, and that's where we had a press conference. And it was a bipartisan effort. And the reason why these license plate readers are so important is because we have a huge crisis of grand larceny of autos, stolen vehicles.
On Staten Island?
Yes, we had, but our Chief Galata from the Patrol Borough of Staten Island for the NYPD has been doing a remarkable job. They've cut down the increase of grand larceny autos through this plan that he has, working throughout the borough with all four precincts, and his communication with New Jersey law enforcement. So these license plate readers on the bridges will help us track down where those stolen vehicles are, how they'll cross a bridge, and I think this is very important, and this is something where we worked across the aisle.
That's so good to hear, because that's the way it should be. Why can't we just spread out and everybody do the same thing, Try and work out together, compromise in some area on important issues like this. I'm not talking about everyone's going to agree to everything or halfway agree, but important issues of what you're talking about, they can come together and get the situation taken care of and done, and they're battling. The thing that really I have a heart for are police officers. I really do. My uncle was one. My good friend on Staten Island, his father was one. He was a hero. Mr. Giordano helping someone falling off the Brooklyn Bridge to save someone's life. Then I have another one on Staten Island, Bernard Campo. He was a police sergeant. And I just got a thing for police officers. And I think they deserve a lot more credit than what they're getting. But you're for supporting law enforcement and public safety. And I just can't believe why anybody could be opposed to that.
Yeah, it's troubling.
Is it about money, or what is it about?
I don't know what drives some of the former defund the police narrative or against the police department. But I think we're seeing a turnaround now in New York City and in New York State, where people are realizing that the police are something that we need in our communities. You know, when I worked in the 6th, 7th precinct in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, I was a sergeant there, and it was one of the toughest precincts in the city. A lot of shootings, a lot of robberies, and it was a minority community. The majority of the community are West Indian, right, and a lot of Haitians, and the good people there were hostages in their own homes because of the crime that was happening. And, you know, we did a remarkable job, I think, lowering crime, taking guns off the street, reducing burglaries. And I think it becomes a secular thing where we go in stages. So if you remember back in the 1970s, before I was born, right, in the late 60s, early 70s, you had the Black Panthers, right?
Yeah.
And there was this narrative against the police, and they were assassinating police officers, right? And now you see, a couple of years ago, we had this anti-police message. We had 2 police officers that were assassinated, and now you see it starting to turn around, where people are realizing that we need the police. You know, you just look at the news today with the protests, the violent protests that were supposed to be peaceful assemblies. It's not happening that way. You see the hate that they're spewing, right? And that brings me to the efforts that I have now restoring the mask ban at assemblies. You know, for the longest time, over 100 years, we had a law in New York State that banned wearing a mask at a public assembly with 4 or more people. Now, what that did was it was spurred by the Ku Klux Klan, right? We didn't want people hiding their identities, promoting hate.
Right.
So in 2020, during COVID,
Right.
the state legislature and Governor Cuomo signed it into law. They repealed the mask ban. Now, during that debate, I spoke about it, and I said, we're going down a dangerous path. We're going to empower those who want to cause chaos and those who want to instill fear if we allow them to wear masks. Fast forward, here we are in 2024. Our college campuses, they're wearing masks, destroying property. They're on the subways, fueled with hate, anti-Semitism. They're hiding their faces. So I have legislation that would bring back the mask ban. It's called deceptively wearing a mask. So if you gather with 4 or more people for a protest, for an assembly, and you're wearing a mask, it's against the law. It's a B misdemeanor. It would be prosecuted up to 90 days in jail. The second piece to that is aggravated deceptive wearing a mask. That would be an A misdemeanor, punishable by up to a year in jail. Now, how do you get to aggravated deceptive wearing a mask? If you commit the original deceptive wearing a mask and you cause an injury to someone, and it doesn't have to be intentional, if you damage property or if you steal property, that would be an elevated charge. Now, there's also in there that we take into account in my legislation that if it's worn for religious purposes, you cannot be charged for that crime. You can't, just for the B misdemeanor, wearing a mask in assembly. Right? Now, in today's news reports, the governor is talking about revisiting it. I've shared my bill with the governor's office. I'm hoping they'll move on it. But I think this is the way that we balance free speech and public safety. And,
Absolutely.
And the old mask law that was on the books that they repealed, it actually was approved in the courts because the Ku Klux Klan actually filed a lawsuit because they got banned from walking in a parade in New York City wearing their masks. And the court ruled that it is not free speech to wear a mask covering your identity so that you can wreak havoc.
Wow. It's just incredible, and what's going on out there, but what you're doing to help it, to make it better. How can people help you on Staten Island? Is anything in November? What can they do to help you?
So it's about helping our community, right? I'm a firm believer in, listen, the 3 pillars, that I live by are service, commitment, and leadership. Service to my family, service to my community, commitment to my values, and leadership, leading through example. So what I ask our community to do is to reach out to the other elected officials throughout New York State and tell them that you are in favor of restoring the mask ban, you are against congestion pricing, and you want judges elected on Staten Island because you need equity. You want justice equity. That's what I think we can do as a community. Those are three things that I ask you to get involved in. Read up on it. See how you can help even further by getting that message out. And that starts by calling the other elected officials throughout New York State, emailing them, and with your help, I'm sure we can get this accomplished.
And that's on both sides. That's for everyone.
Correct.
Blue or red, that's to benefit all. And you see, this is what I really appreciate about Michael, is that he wants to get together with both sides and sit down and get these very important issues mapped out, okay, and figured out and worked out, and that's all for you out there. Now, you know, one thing that I always do, and I think everyone should do it, Staten Island, everywhere in the city, you see a police officer, go up there and thank them. They can use it. Say, thank you for your service. Thank you for being out there helping us. Thank you for putting your life on the line. And it means a lot to them. And it will make you feel better, because these guys are out there, like Michael is out, they're out there for you. They want you to go outside at night and not worry if you go into the drugstore that you might get mugged or hurt, or take a subway and not have to worry about someone with a mask on coming up and threatening your life. These guys are out there, and it's so important to have policemen around, okay, to have men like Michael Reilly in there fighting legislation for you guys. Both sides. Both sides. This man does it. And he does it for all because he cares, and he's honest, and he has what God has given him. He's given him a gift I certainly don't have in this type of field, to help people like you live a better, safer life. And that's what it's all about. I want to thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. God bless.